Hello and welcome. I'm Al Barrows, and this is UFO Disclosure, the podcast that's meant to show an average person's reaction to all the UAP, UFO news from everywhere and anywhere. Has government secrecy gone too far? Is it out of control? And has Lue Elizondo really been threatened? There's a new law out requiring any federal agency to disclose all their UAP information. Otherwise, Congress will cut their funding. I'll also be talking about Stephen Greer's new Disclosure Project Intelligence Archive. Should be a great podcast. Stay tuned. This is an article by David Freeman, and it's entitled Lue Elizondo's Chilling Warning, Pentagon Secrets and Deadly Threats. And I'll be reading from this article. Lue Elizondo, the former director of the Pentagon's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or AATIP, has publicly revealed that he and other whistleblowers have received credible threats to their lives. The chilling revelation shines a harsh light on the lengths to which certain factions within the government will go to silence those who seek to expose the truth about unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs. Elizondo, a decorated veteran and career intelligence officer, has been a leading voice in the fight for UAP transparency. His courageous decision to come forward with information about the government's secretive UAP program has garnered worldwide attention and sparked a renewed interest in the decades-long mystery surrounding these objects. The threats against Elizondo are not only a personal attack, but also a blatant attempt to intimidate other whistleblowers and stifle the flow of information to the public. This is a clear violation of the principles of transparency and accountability that are supposed to be the cornerstone of our democracy. The timing of these threats is particularly suspicious, as Elizondo has recently hinted of upcoming revelations that are expected to be disclosed by mid-2024. These disclosures are rumored to be highly significant and potentially explosive, shedding new light on the true nature of UAPs and the government's knowledge of them. It is no coincidence that those who seek to keep this information hidden are now resorting to threats and intimidation to protect their secrets. News of the threats against Elizondo was first reported by Matt Ford on the Good Trouble Show, citing direct messages from Elizondo. And Elizondo's public statement shared via the Matt Ford show, or the Good Trouble Show, leaves no doubt about the gravity of the situation. And I quote, this is Lue Elizondo, I'm quoting, "When people first inquired about my story, the Pentagon initially confirmed my role in AATIP and the focus of its efforts. Shortly after Secretary Mattis left the department, the Pentagon changed its tune by saying all my emails had been deleted. The same emails that would substantiate not only my claims, but many of those who were part of the AATIP effort, including one of its sponsors, the late Senator Harry Reid. Later, when confronted with a FOIA request, the Pentagon denied again the existence of any email or correspondence between me and other seniors within the department, whom I was regularly engaged with until the day I left the Pentagon in 2017. Recently, one of my emails was leaked by an unknown person on Reddit. This time, when the Pentagon was challenged with the existence of the email, in this case, one that described the authorized transfer of AATIP leadership responsibilities to another senior member of the department and endorsed by the Secretary of Defense front office, they were forced to admit this email existed and was not deleted as they previously claimed. Begrudgingly, when the Pentagon finally did release the email proving my role and participation in AATIP, The Pentagon decided to redact the mention of AATIP, citing FOIA exemptions. By this logic, they would have also have to redact the name Arrow and any other office at the Pentagon. So true. The quote goes on to say, it should also be noted that the Pentagon's mouthpiece for this is one individual within the Public Affairs Office who has been given sole authority to handle all FOIA requests involving UAPs, Arrow, AATIP, and specifically me. All this information is in the public sphere and can be easily verified thanks to the works of certain private citizens fighting for increased government transparency through the FOIA process. Simply put, you and Congress continue to be lied to by a few at the Pentagon who prefer to view you and the American people as sheep. Make no mistake, the Pentagon Public Affairs Office has a long history of feeding misinformation to certain questionable journalists to mislead the American public. And that relationship is alive and well today and is in fact now legal through a new and disturbing policy of perception management. Okay, that's a new phrase to remember, perception management. I guess it's another way of saying disinformation. Okay, so the quote goes on to say, to add insult to injury, I was notified yesterday that there may be a personal threat against myself and several other whistleblowers formerly associated with the UAP effort for the U.S. government. As such, I would like to make this perfectly clear to the American people. I am not prone to accidents. I am not suicidal. I am not abusing drugs. I am not engaged in any illicit activities. If something happens to me or my family members in the future, you will know what happened. The American people have a right to know the truth about UAPs. The government's continued attempts to suppress this information are a betrayal of the public trust and a disservice to those who have served our country with honor. It is time for the government to come clean about what it knows and to stop persecuting those who seek to expose the truth. The dire implications of these threats cannot be overrated or overstated. This is simply a matter of bureaucratic infighting or differing opinions. It's a stark demonstration of the lengths to which powerful forces will go to maintain the UAP cover-up. Elizondo's life, and potentially the lives of others, hangs in the balance. This isn't just about UFOs anymore. It's about the fundamental right of the American people to know the truth and the erosion of trust in the institutions meant to serve them. The Pentagon's actions, the denial of Elizondo's involvement, the deletion and redaction of emails, and the reliance on a single individual to control the narrative reeks of a coordinated campaign of misinformation and obfuscation. This is not the behavior of a government confident in its transparency and accountability. It is the behavior of an entity with something to hide, an entity that fears the power of truth and the consequences of its exposure. Elizondo's warning is a call to action for all who value truth and transparency. It is a plea for the American people to demand accountability from their government and to stand in solidarity with those who dare to speak out against the shadows. This is not just Elizondo's fight. It is a fight for the future of our democracy, a fight against the forces of secrecy and deception that seek to control our knowledge and our understanding of the world around us. We must not allow fear to win. We must not let those who threaten violence and intimidation dictate the course of our collective knowledge. We must stand united in our demand for transparency and accountability, for only then can we hope to unravel mysteries that have plagued us for generations and forge a future built on truth, not fear. The truth about UAPs is out there, and it's time we demand to know it. The threats against Lue Elizondo and other whistleblowers are a desperate attempt to silence the truth. But we will not be silenced. We will not be intimidated. We will continue to seek the truth no matter the cost. We stand with Lue Elizondo and all the whistleblowers who are risking their lives to bring this information to light. We will not be silenced. We will not rest until the truth is revealed. And here's an audio that goes with the article.
In a shocking revelation, former Pentagon official Lue Elizondo has exposed chilling threats against his life and the lives of other whistleblowers. Elizondo, who led the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, has been a key figure in revealing the government's secret dealings with unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs. He stated, "I am not prone to accidents. I am not suicidal. I am not abusing drugs. I am not engaged in any illicit activities. If something happens to me or my family members, you will know what happened." These threats are not just a personal attack. They are a blatant attempt to silence those who dare to expose the truth about UAPs. Elizondo hinted at explosive revelations expected by mid-2024, which could shed new light on the true nature of UAPs and what the government really knows. The Pentagon initially confirmed Elizondo's role, but later backtracked, claiming all emails substantiating his claims were deleted. A leaked email forced the Pentagon to admit its existence, but the lengths to which they've gone to obscure the truth are staggering. Elizondo's warning is a call to action. We must stand united in our demand for transparency and accountability. We stand with Lue Elizondo and all whistleblowers risking their lives for the truth. The fight for transparency continues.
Amen to that. And this was taken from an article by David Freeman. Lue Elizondo's chilling warning, Pentagon secrets and deadly threats. Well done, David Freeman. Thank you for that article. I'm going to show a bit of the Good Trouble show with Matt Ford, where all this was revealed, that Lue Elizondo was being threatened.
For decades, the Pentagon publicly stated that it was not studying UFOs. UFOs were literally nothing but swamp gas. This Pentagon house of cards came crashing down in December 2017 when Lue Elizondo quit the Pentagon in protest and went public in the New York Times bombshell story, quote, "Glowing auras and black programs, the Pentagon's mysterious UFO program." This was literally one of their probably one of their biggest stories. Now, the New York Times story got the attention of lawmakers on Capitol Hill. Before they knew it, pilots and other military members began showing up at their offices to share their experiences encountering UFOs, now known, of course, as UAPs, or unidentified anomalous phenomena, and the retaliation they were receiving from the Pentagon for even reporting the incidents up the chain of command. Now, in reaction, Senators Kirsten Gillibrand, Marco Rubio, and others passed legislation forcing the Pentagon to report to Congress on UAPs and passing laws as well to protect UAP whistleblowers. The New York Times article and the resulting congressional action absolutely enraged the Pentagon, as Lue Elizondo exposed that they've been lying all along, not only to the American public, but also to members of Congress. Now, while initially confirming Lue's involvement in AATIP, the Pentagon quickly changed its tune. Led by Pentagon Public Affairs Officer Susan Goff, the Pentagon, in coordination with the Central Intelligence Agency, denied that AATIP even existed and used journalists and Twitter bloggers to spread conspiracy theories, all to undermine Lue Elizondo's credibility. The Pentagon's goal was absolutely clear. If they could erase any records of AATIP and Lue Elizondo, Congress and the American public would conclude Lue was a fraud, and the Pentagon could, just put the UFO toothpaste back in the tube. Now, Lue Elizondo provided some exclusive statements to the Good Trouble show. Quote, "When people first inquired about my story, the Pentagon initially confirmed my role in AATIP and the focus of its efforts. Shortly after Secretary Mattis left the department, the Pentagon changed its tune by saying all my emails had been deleted, the same emails that would substantiate not only my claims, but many of those who were part of the AATIP effort, including one of its sponsors, the great late Harry Reid." Now, listed was not deleted as they had previously claimed. Recently, one of my emails was leaked by an unknown person on Reddit. Now, this time when the Pentagon was challenged with the existence of the email, in this case, one that described the authorized transfer of AATIP leadership responsibilities to another senior member of the department and endorsed by the Secretary of Defense front office, they were forced to admit this email existed, was not deleted as they had previously claimed. Now, begrudgingly, the Pentagon finally did release the email, proving my role and participation in AATIP. The Pentagon decided to redact the mention of AATIP. Big surprise there. By this logic, they would also have to redact the name of Arrow.
Yeah, I just want to skip here to a comment he made about Arrow.
Director Sean Kirkpatrick spent well over $1.9 million, $1.9 million per year on information and perception management contractor Sancor. Now, we have stated time and time again on the show that the Pentagon, in coordination with the CIA, and I want to remind everybody, the CIA has been the portfolio holder of the UAP, UFO, crash retrieval and back engineering program. They are the ones that own this thing. And they have been conducting, along with the Pentagon, a covert mass psychological operation against the American public and you, members of Congress, regarding the UAP issue. And this is in direct violation of Presidential Executive Order 12333. Now, we have also stated that for literally decades, the Pentagon and the CIA have utilized harassment, intimidation, illegal surveillance, and even wet works, which is the CIA's term for targeted assassinations, to silence or discourage any government whistleblowers involved in the decades-old UFO crash recovery and back engineering program. So this final statement from Lue Elizondo is absolutely the most disturbing thing. Quote, to add insult to injury, I was notified yesterday that there may be a personal threat against myself and several other whistleblowers formerly associated with the UAP effort for the U.S. government. As such, I would like to make this perfectly clear to the American people. I am not prone to accidents. I'm not suicidal. I'm not abusing drugs. I am not engaged in any illicit activities. If something happens to me or my family members, in the future, you will know what happened.
Yeah, it's too bad that Lue Elizondo has to make that statement. And that was Matt Ford from the Good Trouble Show. Thanks for all that good information. Matt Ford on the Good Trouble Show was the vehicle by which Lue Elizondo put out this story that he feels that he and other whistleblowers are being threatened. And it's too bad that this still goes on in this day and age. So I found this on social media. Tim Burchett introduced a new bill that would require heads of each federal department or agency to declassify all documents related to UAPs. And it's an article by Matthew Phelan, who's the senior science reporter for Daily.com. And the title of this article is Proof Aliens Exist? ? Federal agencies must now deliver all UFO reports for public disclosure, including classified material. Federal agencies have until October the 20th to deliver every document, audio, and video they have about UFOs to the U.S. government for distribution to the public. The National Archives and Records Administration, or NARA, issued the instructions this month, putting into action the UFO Disclosure Amendment to the 2024 National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA, as signed into law last December, if you guys recall. The guidelines reveal the latest strategy to compel unwilling parts of the U.S. military and the intelligence community into revealing everything they know about the mysterious airborne events now called Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon, or UAP. The move comes 2 months after the Pentagon UFO office issued a controversial report to Congress claiming it found no verifiable evidence that the U.S. government or private industry has ever had access to extraterrestrial technology. And that was Sean Kirkpatrick when he was then acting at head of the AARO office, or the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. The U.S. National Archives is demanding that all UFO records by October the 20th, 2024, and if you see this picture here that I have on the screen above, the U.S. Air Force once made public this image of a 1972 Viking space probe awaiting recovery at the White Sands Missile Range near Roswell to explain the 1947 Roswell UFO crash 25 years prior. And if you look at the picture right here, the image of the Viking 1972 Viking space probe looks a lot like your typical UFO. So I can see how they would try and use this as misinformation. Okay, so in this picture here, you can see where the National Archives facility in College Park in Maryland is located. It houses the most contemporary government documents available to scholars and the public. The newly demanded UFO records will be available here, as well as online via digital database. NARA archivists have issued guidelines mandating that all UFO or UAP documents delivered in electronic formats with detailed metadata for inclusion in a searchable database to be made available to the public. I'll believe it when it happens. Okay, the database will include classified material that the NARA will store independently, safekeeping the records until they can be declassified for the public. NARA's guidelines make it clear that all government agencies are required to label their records with each file's official security status and any special controls, including special compartmentalized information, SCI, and special access programs, or SAPs. Every federal agency, including branches of the U.S. military and the intelligence community, like the CIA, are also required to explain to NARA and the public why certain UFO documents qualify as exempt from disclosure under the new law. If released in part or withheld in full, the NARA guidelines advisory posting cite the specific grounds for postponement in Section 1843 of the NDAA. The archives added that these agencies must adhere to either these provisions in the new UFO Disclosure Amendment of the 2024 NDAA or to the provisions outlined in the Executive Order 13526. The order put into effect by President Barack Obama in 2009 states that all classified material over 25 years old will be up for automatic declassification. Okay, and here's a picture. In the late 1990s, the U.S. Air Force also pointed to this aeroshell from a 1967 NASA Voyager Mars space probe, and you can see the picture here if you guys have a visual, as an explanation for the 1947 Roswell UFO crash 2 decades prior. That's funny. And when I went to Area 51, the Rachel Ranch has a little UFO on a crane that looks just like this. That's probably what they're simulating, this picture here. But yeah, so this picture, as well as the probe, this one here that I'm showing now, were both used as disinformation to fool the public into thinking that there was no crash at Roswell, that it was either this probe or this aeroshell from a 1967 NASA Voyager Mars space probe that you see above here. Members of both houses of Congress expressed frustration over the watered-down nature of the UFO Disclosure Amendment signed into law with the 2024 NDAA. We got ripped off, and I quote, "We got completely hosed. They stripped out every part," said Representative Tim Burchett, one of the lawmakers behind the act. And unpersuaded by the Pentagon's latest UFO report this past March, members of the House Oversight Committee in Congress have recently said that they are preparing 2 new public hearings on UFOs to keep the pressure on. Okay, so you heard it here, folks. They're planning 2 new public hearings on UFOs to keep the pressure on. And I quote again, "We don't have the facts yet," as Republican Congressman Representative Glenn Grothman explained to reporters. One of these hearings, according to Representative Anna Polina Luna, will focus on undersea cases of unknown craft known as unidentified submerged objects, or USOs. And this article was taken from thedailymail.com. It was by Matthew Bellin. He's the senior science reporter for thedailymail.com. Okay, and this is a posting from r/UFOB. New legislation included in 2024 NDAA will cut funding to unreported UAP programs unless congressional leadership is read in. Okay, so this post is focusing in on this piece of legislation because it was largely flew under the radar in the shadow of the UAP Disclosure Act or the Schumer Amendment. And it's a very short piece of legislation, but it's very powerful. And it's under Section 1687, Limitation on Use of Funds for Certain Unreported Programs. Limitation on availability of funds. None of the funds authorized to be approached or otherwise made available by this act may be obligated or expended in support of any activities involving unidentified anomalous phenomena protected under any form of special access or restricted access limitations unless the Secretary of Defense has provided the details of the activity to the appropriate congressional committees and congressional leadership, including for any activities described in a report released by the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office in the fiscal year of 2024. So this piece of legislation basically says that if you are running any program that has to do with UFOs, the Secretary of Defense must inform the intel committees in both House and Senate and the rest of congressional leadership. The leadership and those committees must be read in on these programs so that we can reestablish proper congressional oversight. And if they don't read the members of Congress, well, then the funding to their program gets cut. So defense contractors aren't going to be happy when their contracts are revoked because their government handlers didn't disclose the true nature of the programs they're running. They're going to get it cut off if they don't comply with this new mandate, in other words. We, the public, are still in the dark, meanwhile, and unaware of the details the investigations going on behind the scenes have revealed thus far. Also, what is the actual enforcement mechanism here? I don't see a date by which things must be disclosed. Have they already begun reading in congressional leadership? Because this is already in law. Yet this is another huge piece of news not getting picked up by the media. So what is the actual enforcement mechanism here? The only stumbling block that I see here with Tim Burchett's new UAP Transparency Act is that it requires any federal agency to reveal what they know, but there's no way to compel federal agencies to release these files. The House of Reps don't really have the power to enforce this. Private corporations have propriety rights used to maintain this secrecy. So Congress can't really compel these private companies to reveal what they know. I guess this all could have been enforced if the eminent domain aspect of the UAP Act back in 2023 was not gutted, but unfortunately, it's no longer in place. I want to talk about an email I got the other day from the Paradigm Institute and Dan Sheehan's article addressing whether government secrecy is out of control. So this is from the Paradigm Institute, run by Dan Sheehan, and he does some very good work. He's leading the charge right now for government transparency on the UAP issue. And included in this email is an article by Kevin Wright, and he says that government secrecy is out of control. As the Wall Street Journal reported, it is impossible to, quote, know how much information is classified by the government, end quote, in its totality. But the, quote, trove is likely to include billions of records and is rapidly expanding, end quote. The financial cost of all this classification is outrageous at approximately 18.5 billion per year. Wow. That's how much government secrecy is costing taxpayers. A condition by which the government keeps too many secrets is detrimental to the health of our democracy. In 2012, the Public Interest Declassification Board wrote to the President of the United States the following concerning our government's overclassification of information. Quote, the findings of the board are conclusive. Present practices for classification and declassification of national security information are outmoded, unsustainable, and keep too much information from the public. Amen. Secrecy must be kept to the minimum required to meet legitimate national security considerations. To maintain democratic values, government must act to ensure openness and should have to justify any resort to secrecy. Moving down on this letter by Kevin Wright, it says that it's fascinating the term secrecy is mentioned only once in the Constitution, and it is notably absent from Article 2 concerning the presidency. Moving on towards the end, this article says, yet the executive branch is primarily responsible for churning out countless classified documents and implementing mountains of secrecy. In other words, over the past 235 years, Congress has slowly ceded its constitutional ground to the president. Last year, the New York Times reported that the federal government classifies more than 50 million documents a year. Good God. That's 986 documents each day and every day, or 5,708 each and every hour. Good God. Or 95 documents each and every minute. Good God. 95 documents every minute? If it took 5 minutes to read this column, the government classified 475 documents during that window. That's outrageous, and I agree. It's time for Congress to act, reassert itself, and rein in out-of-control secrecy. It's in everyone's best interest. And it's signed, Together We Create the Future, Danny Sheehan, President and Chief Counsel of the New Paradigm Institute. He also says here, please consider sharing our call to action requesting congressional hearing with UFO UAP whistleblowers with your social media followers. And if you guys want to follow up on this New Paradigm Institute email, you can go to newparadigmproject.org and you just click a couple of icons and it'll shoot an email to your representatives, already a pre-written statement asking them for more transparency on the UAP issue. And that's the newparadigmproject.org. I'd like to talk about the Disclosure Project Intelligence Archive that Dr. Greer put out now. This is Dr. Greer himself being interviewed by Blake Cousins.
Blake Cousins, along with Dr. Stephen Greer, founder of the Disclosure Project, and his new mission, dropping a massive amount of data. Let me tell you, the DPIA, the Disclosure Project Intelligence Archive, is massive, and it's going to be on a website. 33 years of work, and you're about to see it. The world's going to see it, and they're going to be rocked. Dr. Greer, thanks for joining us.
Okay, I'm going to jump ahead a bit here.
I will tell everyone, let me just say a headline right here. I was just up on Capitol Hill last week meeting with members of the House Oversight Committee and members of Congress, and quite frankly, I told them if they had hearings that started at 9 a.m. and went till 5 p.m. every day they're in session for the next year, it would be less than 10% of what's in this archive. So when people say, when is disclosure going to happen? My friends, this is it. Now they can have an official disclosure if they ever get themselves organized. We're going to talk about this in a minute, what the status of disclosure is with the US government. But I will tell you the reason I did this is because even though the Senate intelligence guys couldn't get it organized, we've spent about $500,000 on staff and travel and programming The website alone costs something upwards of $100,000 to create.
Okay, I'm going to jump ahead here because he's talking about the funding and how it cost, in his modest estimation, over $20 million, or it's $20 million worth of information that he put into the archive.
You want to look into the crash retrievals. We have 122 documented crash retrievals, many of them illustrated. People working with Michael Schratt did, but other cases we have. And then we have those organized by priority. And the ones that are most important are the ones that have named sources as opposed to anonymous sources. So you will see that that's a huge section of the website as well. So there's a whole category on technologies, anti-gravity propulsion, the history of it, electromagnetic warfare systems. So pretty much everything that anyone would ever want to know or need to know, whether you're the president or the man on the street, is in this archive. It's not an overstatement.
Yeah, it's basically like what you're putting together is the Bible of disclosure, and 33 years of the.
Okay, so Blake Cousins from Third Phase of the Moon is calling the Disclosure Project Intelligence Archive like the Bible of UAP. Okay, so he's also said that the archive is user-friendly. I'm not so sure about that. I'll go into that in just a moment, how user-friendly it really is. Let me see if I can get to the part here.
Because this field is so broad, the stories are so plentiful that you want to narrow it down to a specific situation. You could easily do that at the site. I think that's important. You talk about these top secret files. To me, that is interesting, because aren't you afraid of any kind of
files here,
blowback releasing top secret files? I know you talk about, well, these are illegally, these programs are illegal, therefore it doesn't come under the Constitution of being top secret. You still ready?
Hey, I've been doing that for a long time. I mean, if you don't own the case behind me, I'm in Washington right now at our place up the street from the White House. And, I have two black books there that are prior presidential briefing documents that have.
Okay, I'm going to skip ahead. He has a lot of talking points that he repeats in his interviews. I have a lot of respect for Stephen Greer, but if you've heard his interviews before, he's said a lot of this countless times in other interviews. Going to skip ahead here and see if I can find. Okay, so he's mentioned that it's classified information. He's talking here about that it's a free website.
Millions of miles
initially, anyway.
People acquiring all this material. It's at least $20 million in content we're giving for free. So that's why we're asking people to support the crowdfunding, so the archive doesn't have to be shut down and have a paywall put up where you'd have to pay a monthly fee or something. Right now, it's an experiment. I'll tell you that. No one's ever released something this big.
Okay, I'm going to move on ahead a little bit where he talks about having to register.
You can go in there. You do have to register and provide an email. I don't care what you provide. The reason we're doing that, I had one person say, well, then people have to register. I say, yeah, you do. Because otherwise, the covert groups that want to bankrupt us could create 1 million bots out of bot server farms from North Korea and elsewhere and flood the site and run up the usage charges from the cloud so that, it would reach hundreds of thousands of dollars a month, and we'd have to shut it down. So the reason we have that registration system isn't anything spooky, is to keep it from being invaded by bots.
Okay, now I did try and register myself and was unable to. I got an error. There's still glitches in the Disclosure Project Intelligence Archive. I got this email after trying to register, and it's directly from Dr. Stephen Greer. It says that it's an important announcement regarding the DPIA, or the Disclosure Project Intelligence Archive registration. And you can see that it's authentic. It's got the logo and everything. It says, we want to let everyone know that if you have been having trouble registering and creating an account on the DPIA, we have found out the registration process is under attack. That's written with bold letters, if you can see this. Here's what we know. Over the past several days, thousands of bots have been jamming the registration process. This is causing a ripple effect and essentially causing the mail service to shut us down and stop any mail from being received or sent for 24 hours. By the time the mail system is restored, we get slammed again. We are actively working to resolve this issue, and we appreciate your patience during this process. The fact this is happening is an indication of just how important the archive is and Dr. Greer's work. Your generous support helps us continue to provide this vital information to the public without a paywall. Thank you for your understanding. Okay, so they're having problems with bots. So if you guys are trying to get onto the new Dr. Greer Disclosure Project Intelligence Archive and you're having trouble, bots are to blame. Now, getting back to the Blake Cousins and Stephen Greer interview, there's a part here that I wanted to show where he talks about a law enforcement effort to protect high-level whistleblowers.
Now, the good news. Everybody want to hear some good news. Here's some good news. So yesterday, I was talking to a very senior official in the government who I've been working with for a little over a year now in putting together a law enforcement effort. And you've heard me speak about this. And one thing I asked for from the Senate and the House was serious 24/7 security and protection for certain high value whistleblowers. I'm not talking about something like Mr. Fravor, saw one of these objects, but people who worked in the skunk works, people who have worked for major corporations, people who've managed programs that are illegal for DOD, that are unacknowledged special access projects that have been run illegally and off budget. Those people really are scared for their lives and their families' lives. Now, Congress, even the bill that came out of the Senate, did not have those provisions. Here's some good news. I can't say what agencies are involved, but that protection is now in place and effective after June 20th.
Okay, so I hope Lue Elizondo is listening. After June the 20th, he should be okay because he has been threatened. And I'd like to finish up with the Dr. Greer interview where he talks about catastrophic disclosure.
What we're going to do is he calls it catastrophic disclosure. It would be dispositive, it'd be huge, and it would be all at once, and it's going to catch the president and the Congress flat-footed. So the reason, I'm giving you a little reason why I rushed to get this archive out. I know what's going on in that world. And so this is a way to prepare people with all this content for something much bigger that's coming.
Catastrophic disclosure. I like the sound of that. And,
well, I mean, we're trying to,
it's going to be
actually
big.
wanting to do this. I'm wanting to do this in a way that doesn't totally just collapse things. But I can tell you the word fed up has been used by me, to me by these people who have been in these senior positions. And I keep saying that when I have meetings with members of Congress. I go, there's some other things going on, and they're getting fed up with this molasses and winter slow movement that's going on in the Congress. And I think that when the Senate bill got pushed aside and that amnesty or safe harbor clause got taken out in December, that was sort of the final straw for some of these guys. They went, all right, and the words they used was, between the corruption and incompetence in Congress, we're fed up. So these are guys, I sort of represent them when I go to these meetings, and we'll see, what Congress does. But the people are going to do this disclosure is what I think. The good people who are going to defect, the whistleblowers.
I agree with Dr. Greer. People are fed up with the slow movement in Congress. And I think that at this point, we're going to have some sort of a grassroots catastrophic disclosure is what we're left with. So Dr. Stephen Greer is known for having contacts with NHI using a CE5 protocol, which is basically group meditation. and they summon these UAP. Recently, I came across something on social media where a nuclear device, the polar opposite, is being used to summon UAPs. Check this out. Okay, so I got this from r/UFOs. In the last 2 minutes of his presentation at the Soul Foundation, Dr. Knuth, Knuth, is the way you spell his name, Dr. Knuth, and I assume that's the way you pronounce it. He slipped in an experiment that he and his colleagues had been working on using a small nuclear reactor to attract UFOs. Okay, so this is Dr. Kevin Knuth from the Soul Foundation talking about how he's in the possession of a nuclear device that is able to summon UAPs, as opposed to Dr. Greer's method, which just uses meditation or telepathy.
So I'm going to quick tell you one interesting thing, and I'll finish here. We at UAPX were trying to figure out how we can lure UFOs in to study them, or make contact, right? So how can you do this? My colleague, close colleague and friend, Matthew Shadagas, we finally settled on the fact that UFOs have an interest in and an ability to detect nuclear weapons, some of them underground, some of them in bunkers or in storage depots. How do they do this? Are they using neutrinos, which are really hard to detect? Are they using gamma rays? We don't know, but my colleague has developed a new technology. It is a basically handheld lithium-powered nuclear fission reactor, which he's now patenting. So he's developed a nuclear reactor, and the idea is to go out, power our UFO observing equipment with this new nuclear reactor, and maybe these guys will detect our nuclear reactor and come down and find out what those crazy monkeys are up to this time. And we can get some imagery or some data. So that's our plan.
Okay, so that was Dr. Knuth talking about his and his friends' new handheld nuclear fission device that summons UAPs for study. I wish him all the luck. My name is Al Barrows. This has been UFO Disclosure. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And let's try and keep the kids in war-torn countries like Gaza and the Ukraine in our prayers. Let's try and summon a positive shield of protection for them. Thank you. Thank you for listening to my podcast.